Stop motion animator,
Your refreshment, sir.
rapper,
If we ever split apart, I don't know what I would do. If I died, I know I'd go up to you.
voice actor,
Joker, please! I was set up! Bruce Wayne is Batman! And people say I'm crazy.
comic book artist, painter, photographer, videographer, children's book illustrator, storyboard artist, 2D animator, wrestler, boxer, coach,
Let's
and
go ahead
YouTuber.
and get into it. What do you think?
All of these identities that I try to define myself by at different seasons of my life were at one time a curse that kept me trapped in a lie. A lie that told me that I wasn't a successful professional artist because I couldn't commit to mastering one thing. I felt worthless. I felt that I lacked focus. And that if I had been able to narrow my life down to only one thing, like a lot of the heroes that I idolized did, then I wouldn't be stuck where I am now. In time, I would recognize that the very thing that I felt cursed with, God used to bless me. I wasn't just an animator, or a videographer, or any singular one of those creative aspects that I touched. I was developed to be much more. All this time, I felt like life was punishing me. But really, God was just preparing me. He blessed me with all of these different interests and talents for a much greater purpose. One that I couldn't see at the time because I was so stuck in the way that I thought the world was supposed to see me. I was so focused on who I wanted to be that I neglected who I truly was, who God created me to be. Sometimes we become so committed to the version of ourselves that we've created that we leave no room for God to reveal the person that He's actually been for me. I had spent so much time asking God to help me become who I wanted to be that I never stopped to ask who He was already shaping me to become. I told myself that I had to narrow down and be one of these things to be considered professional or successful. But God told me I wasn't any single one of those things. I was all of them, and none of them at the same time. He didn't create me to be trapped by my worldly identity. He created me to be freed by my spiritual identity in Christ. He created me to be a storyteller. Join me today in this very first episode of Studio Talk, where we get into the nitty-gritty of identity, faith, passion, and how you can reach the full potential of your life. Hey, welcome to this first episode of Studio Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the lie that kept me from becoming a professional artist for 15 years. And this is the start of a series and a start of, honestly, a new direction with this YouTube channel. I'll talk a little bit more about it towards the end, but I'm really wanting to continue to pursue the channel, and it's something that I've always really wanted to do, and it's just been hard to find the time and to justify the time to put into it. And I'm just in a place where this is something that I really enjoy and really want to do more of, and give a lot of the things that God has given me, a lot of the wisdom and a lot of things that I've struggled through. We're gonna be wrestling with different questions and just kind of working through it. The idea of this Studio Talk is to give a space where we can talk about a lot of important, not just things with art or me, but just important life questions, and kind of wrestle with it, and see if we can reflect and work through it and find something out of it. So, like I said, today we're talking about the lie that kind of kept me from becoming a professional artist for 15 years. And when I say professional, I'm saying just in the way that I kind of thought about myself, how I identified and how I thought about who I was as an artist and just as an individual. And really the lie starts way back in the beginning. Even before I started doing art, it really kind of took root at the same time that my gifts took root. And I think that's something that happens a lot. When a seed is planted, there's also weeds that are planted as well. And the seed was really planted when I was a kid, and I started out as an athlete and wrestling and boxing since I was 4 years old, and that was always the focus of my life. My mission since I was a child was to become a champion, and so that was really what the focus was. And I can recall that coming from a very young age, and that it really meshed with my ambitions and my dreams that came later on when I really found my love for being an artist. And that was around, I was always kind of dabbling in the creatives, but that was probably around 2010, and you can kind of go back and track it. When I started this YouTube channel and I started making videos, that was around the same time that I was really getting into the arts. And it was around 2010 that I was like 5th, 6th grade, and I started really with music. I wanted to be a rapper. I really aspired to be a rapper at that time. Christian hip-hop and just hip-hop in general was getting presented to me and really in the forefront of my life as I was experiencing a lot of different things at that age. It's an interesting age that a lot of transition and a lot of different things that you're dealing with. That's why there's a lot of movies about coming of age stories, because it's where you kind of starting to find and explore and find your identity and separate yourself as an individual. And during that time I was starting to get into the music and rap, and eventually I started getting into stop motion animation, specifically brick filming, Lego stop motion animation. You can go back and you can watch a lot of that stuff on this channel. And that really was the segue into animation. I really kind of got into brick filming because I was really into Legos, and I was still developing my drawing at that time, so I wouldn't have been able to animate. So I kind of think that was a big factor in that as well, at least hand-drawn animate. So Legos were the perfect medium because I had them accessible, and that led into, at that time, I started getting into comics. And so there's really kind of always been this back and forth between animation and comics. And you can look at it like I was always jumping back and forth between the two mediums. And then as I started getting older, again, I'm focused on wrestling and boxing as well, and trying to pursue that dream of becoming a champion. That was always the forefront of my life and always the priority. And during high school, I started finding success. And I think when I started to find success, that is when I started to kind of make that my identity and define myself as an athlete, and put myself in that bubble and kind of at the same time trap myself in that bubble. And it made it difficult to feel like I could move around. And eventually that led to me getting a ride. Eventually that led to me going to UNC Chapel Hill, and during that time was a very difficult transition, moving away from family, my support that I had. My parents, my dad specifically, was always that person that kind of drove the ambition and kept me locked in and kept me focused on what I was trying to do. And I was also at this time getting more invested in social media, but not in a healthy way. And that comparison started to play a factor with how I saw myself as an artist, and was just always struggling with the idea of I need to narrow down. I need to find what it is that I want to do with the rest of my life with this art. I knew that I wanted to try to make a living, and that I wanted art to be a part of my life because I just loved it, and I was enthralled with it, and I knew that I wanted to get to a point where every single day I could do this. But wrestling was always, and boxing was always the forefront of my life. It was always a priority. And it came to a point where it became a burden. It became something that was kind of in the way of what I really wanted to do. And I was still just so attached to that identity that it was hard to maneuver. And I had a really tough time grappling, trying to do both and trying to be everything all at once, and feeling like I needed to be able to be one thing and focus my time and my energy all at being this one thing, because that was what is presented, especially through social media, through a lot of the different things that you see. It's the art world is really set up to kind of pigeonhole you, to block you in, and this is what you do, this is what you're really good at, this is what you're efficient. And those kind of people are really celebrated, especially the masters that have devoted their craft to this one focus, and trying to be that, trying to conform to that box really is what created the lie that I never felt like I was professional, or that I could be a professional. It was always a question in the back of my mind, because I couldn't focus. I couldn't focus on one thing. I would start working on animation, and then I wanted to work on comics. When I started working on animation, when I started working on comics, I'd get to a point where I wanted to work on animation. And I was also experimenting with a lot of different mediums when I was in college, because I was a studio art major, which was a real blessing in hindsight, because I got the chance to explore and to get out of my comfort zone. I was able to work with oils, worked with watercolor, worked with acrylic, and worked in charcoal. Did a lot of different types of mediums, but most importantly, I started to understand my thought process, and how to be intentional with my work, to be intentional with every decision, to understand why I was doing something, not just doing it based on instinct, but doing it because there was a reason, and I knew what the reason was. And that was a tough road as well, because that's something that takes a lot of time when you've come from a place that you're very small-minded, and I thought that there was only one way to be an artist, to be a comic book artist. There was only one way to be an animator, and if you weren't doing it that way, then it wasn't good or good enough. And that viewpoint locked me in and made it very difficult to break out of that small-mindedness. Eventually I got there. It definitely took a lot of work. I really, really struggled conceptually because of that. But I think that the ability to get outside of my comfort zone and to work with a lot of different mediums is something that I really encourage any student, anyone that's learning the craft, and even professionals to try, because it expands what you're capable of doing. And so at this time, it was really tough. It was heart-wrenching. There were a lot of moments where I questioned myself, whether I would admit it to somebody or not. And I also was at a point in my life where reaching out for help was not something that I was probably going to do, because I had never seen that. And I didn't think anything was wrong as well. And so these lies is not just one lie, but these lies conglomerated into my belief in my identity being trapped in what I thought I was supposed to be. After graduation, I definitely developed a lot in the aspects of draftsmanship, and my mind had opened a lot. My storytelling skills were still, and my conceptual skills were still, I was still improving on them and still trying to get out of a lot of the closed-mindedness that I had talked about earlier. But I got to a point where I had wrestled, boxed, done the combat sport, been an athlete up to this point for my whole entire life. Told that this was what I was supposed to be. And I had just reached a point to where I'd finished, but I had fallen out of love with it. And I never thought that I was going to pursue it again. I just wanted to finish what I had started. And now from that, and transition from graduation to becoming an adult, and I was in a relationship, got in a relationship during college, and I was now transitioning. I was getting engaged, and this whole transition of now I'm starting a life with somebody, and eventually we got pregnant, and we're going to be starting a family, and all these pressures, responsibilities, these blessings, but blessings are also responsibility and pressure. And I was struggling to handle that pressure. I became obsessed with making it as an artist, and I now had the freedom and the chance to do whatever I wanted to do. I had to try to provide at the same time, so that pressure was there. But ultimately, I was in a position that I could do whatever, and I could now work on being an artist, which was my dream at that time, to be a full-time professional artist. I could now do that. I can now work towards that if I set my mind down and focus. But I lost myself. I lost myself in chasing that version of myself that I thought I was supposed to be. And there was just a lot of feelings of never being enough during that time, because like I said, I was just stuck in this illusion that I had to be this one thing, and I was still constantly bouncing around. But every time I also put my energy towards trying to make it and trying to be an artist, meant that I was dropping the ball somewhere else. So the more energy and the more time, I thought if I prioritize this and I focus and give all my effort, just like I did to wrestling and to boxing, that I would make the money, I would find success, and be able to give my family the life that I want to give them, and really give myself the life that I wanted. And not considering that I'm now a different person. I've got different responsibilities. I've got other things that I've got to think about, but it was just so stuck in, like, I can't let this go. this has to work or I'm going to be stuck. Being a truck driver was what I was doing at the time. And that mindset just drove me to sacrifice a lot of time with my family, to really make my fiance sacrifice a lot of her time for my dreams and my goals. And that's right, you gotta give and take on both sides, but it was something that she hadn't really signed up for and didn't know that that was what that entailed, and something that we hadn't communicated or worked through at that point. And she's thinking like, hey, like you gotta be here focused and on helping me build this family, and your mind's not here. You're always focused on your work, and now you're always unhappy because you're not living up to what you thought you wanted to be. And it really almost tarnished my relationship with her, and even with my daughter. She was during that time I missed a lot of time. I missed a lot of moments even when I was there because I wasn't mentally there. And that was a tough pill to swallow. And it took reaching my bottom there to eventually start to unpack these lies and to unpack this illusion that I was driving myself miserable from. Now, before I move on to the rest of the story, I want to pause and take a moment to explain what I'm working on with this piece and my thought process. So initially I had this idea to do the thumbnails for these videos and have them only be hands. And, you get to see in the video the process of me creating the artwork that is going to be the thumbnail. And so initially I wasn't sure, as far as what direction I want to take with rendering and, shadow and lighting and stuff like that. But as I was working on it, I did not like the way that it was turning out. The hand just really wasn't working for me, especially when I had added the hatching. And so, you know what? I heard it was a comic book artist. I can't remember who said it, and maybe it might have been Todd McFarlane. Somebody along those natures, I think, was saying, if it's not working, just black it out. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I decided, hey, this isn't really working for me, but I can save it by just let's make this a silhouette, and I think it still is going to read just as well. Maybe even better, just having that stark contrast. I think it'll read pretty well. And so this is something that I want to do with these videos. I don't know that every single time I will do the hand drawing. I think when it's a serious topic such as this one, that I'm gonna do these kinds of thumbnails. If it's not a serious topic or it's just not kind of in the realm of studio talk, I'm probably just gonna, work with something else. But just wanted to give you guys a little bit into my thought process behind this so you know where this is going. So now back to the story. I'll say it is incredibly easy to fall into this pitfall of a lie. And it could be, any sort of lie that really makes you question your identity, question your self-worth, question who you are. And it ultimately comes when you define yourself by your work or what you're doing. And for me, it's whenever I place something other than God in the center of my life. And this lie, it creates an illusion. The illusion convinces you that there's no other way to make it work. So for me, this lie was that I needed to narrow down, and that because I wasn't being specific in what I was trying to do, that this was why I couldn't find the success that I wanted. And even when I did try to do that, it didn't work because I ultimately wasn't being who God created me to be and who He was giving me these interests and these passions for as an artist. My interests in different mediums and careers led me to believe that I was just incapable of commitment, which wasn't true. It was more so that I didn't have the structure and the perspective and the mind frame that it needed to be committed to what I was trying to do. My own ambition, my own philosophy of who I needed to be was getting in the way of committing myself to the process. I thought that, if I move on to something else, everything that I learned before was wasted. And so I would work on something and then, kind of lose that drive and ambition and jump to something else. And ultimately never quite finishing that thing that I originally started. And then by the time I work on this other thing, I feel, terrible because I didn't finish that thing. And it just ended up becoming this cycle. And I was stuck in this cycle. And it was a long, long process of feeling this guilt, this shame, and feeling worthless. But God's plan is much bigger. And now that I look back, I can see that I wasn't spending those 15 years failing as an artist and failing to choose a path. And no, I wasn't doing that. I spent 15 years accumulating creative skills and creative vocabulary and the tools that I would need to do what I felt like my ultimate mission was. And that's kind of where I'm at with this channel. This channel is going to now become the next chapter in that. And you can go back again, like I said, you can go back and see where I started. And I love that. At first, for a while, I was like, maybe I need to do a different channel or I need to erase it. No, all that stuff is going to stay on there because you can see the journey, you can see the struggle, you can see, the passion as well. And I think that's beautiful to see the way that the process works and to see, just some of those things that you wouldn't see otherwise. And one of the stories in the Bible that God has been showing me, one of the people in the Bible that I've been looking a lot into recently is Bezalel. God introduces Bezalel in Exodus 31, and it says that God called Bezalel by name to be one of the artists, the main artists, to design this tabernacle for God that Moses would use to communicate. The community would be able to use to communicate and have that connection with God. And one of the reasons that why God chose Bezalel specifically was because of all the different skills and the different level of craftsmanship that Bezalel had that he knew would be good enough for the job. And, I started realizing that, gifts are not always the same for everyone. And gifts can mean more than one gift, right? It's not always just one gift that God gives. I think a lot of times, a lot of people have a lot more than one gift, whether it's, even just as an artist or even just in everyday life. You can look at your own life. For me, I know that, there's a lot of gifts that God has given me as an artist, but there's gifts outside of that He's given me, this ability to coach and to always try to put other people first before myself, and, my ability to kind of separate my own ambitions for helping other people. That's something that I think really helps me a lot. That's a gift that God has given me that I'm really grateful for, because I've been able to help a lot of other people, because I'm not looking at things through the lens of my situation, but looking at it through the lens of their situation. And, these skills are just tools to serve the greater purpose. And when you start to look at it this way, the question starts to change that you ask yourself of, For me, like, it was, what kind of artist am I? That's what I was trying to figure out. Like, who am I as an artist? And it changed from that to more so me looking at, what am I trying to say with my work? What am I trying to say, and who am I trying to say it to, and how can I reach them? It became more focused on that than who I was. And I'll just say personally, once I made that shift, once I started focusing on what I could do with the gifts God gave me, and started focusing on how can I best serve other people, how can I best steward these gifts and steward these talents and steward this passion to help others, man, it gives you so much more than when you're thinking solely about, what can I do to make my dreams come to life? What can I do to see this to fruition? Like, it's just, at some point, even if you get that thing, you're still gonna find that emptiness because there's nothing behind it. When you focus on giving instead of gaining, it's a funny thing, because you gain way more by giving. And I'm not trying to get too preachy, but I do just want to say that, and encourage whoever might be out there that might be struggling with, what am I supposed to do with my life? And, maybe you really love being an artist, and maybe, like, right now is a really, really tough time to be an artist. The rise of AI, and the animation industry is really struggling. Really, a lot of the art industries are struggling, not just animation, but there's a lot of change going on, a lot of people getting laid off, a lot of people that are having to go and find jobs elsewhere, and they can't depend on, art to be the stability in their life. I just want to encourage you to just shift, be okay with having to shift, and understand that does not negate who you are as an artist. That doesn't have to change how you see yourself as an artist. That doesn't mean that you're less of an artist, and it doesn't mean that you're more of an artist, whether you're hired by a company or whether you're spending 40 hours a week working as an artist, or whether you're just doing your own thing whenever you can. That doesn't change how much of, you are being a professional or not. What defines you as a professional is your ability to continue to show up, to continue to push yourself, and to continue to learn, and to just be the best person you can be. And if you focus on that, focus on giving rather than gaining, I promise that you will find all of what you need, what you're looking for in that. For me, when I finally realized that I was just a storyteller, the one thing that I thought for the longest time that I was terrible at, when I finally realized that God was making me just a better storyteller and helping me develop that craft, I stopped focusing on what medium. I stopped focusing on what industry. I stopped focusing on, I need to get a job at Disney, or need to get a job at DC or Marvel, like, to become credible. I stopped focusing on that. And I just focused on, one, how can I follow God's calling on my life? Two, how can I help other people? And three, how can I tell the best story possible, whatever it is that I'm working on? The medium may change, but the purpose doesn't. The avenue that God has presented and led you to may change. It may not be the same as it was before, but don't dwell on it. The mission stays the same. And that brings me to the last part of this video, which, as I spoke about, is YouTube is one of those steps for me, and what I'm going to be doing on this YouTube channel. Now, I'm going to get better at these videos. I have a tendency to ramble, and I have a tendency to mumble as well. Something that I'm working on, and it's makes it hard to want to do these videos. But God's working on me and letting me just kind of let go of those insecurities, and because I want the way that I deliver what I'm trying to say to be, perfectly delivered, but that's just not the way it works. And even when we speak with each other, and communicating, and I don't want it to be quote unquote perfect. Like, I think that's a large reason why I struggled to keep consistent here on YouTube, or even just with some of my projects in general. But Studio Talk is just an avenue for me to express some of the things that God has been putting on the inside of me, and you guys will get to come along on the journey with that, but you're going to be learning a lot, and I'm going to also be learning a lot. And so if you have any suggestions, if you have any feedback, please go ahead. I'm always open to feedback and suggestions. I'm really grateful to be doing this. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to do more. I'm excited to keep pumping these out. So if there's anything that you're struggling with as well, and you have questions, and just feel free to put it out there. I'm just looking to help as many people by using some of the things that I've had to struggle with and wrestle with, and just looking to share some of my testimony and the journey that I've been through, and just to learn as well through that. So thank you guys for watching. Lastly, I just want to pray. Lord God, thank you for this time. I pray that you bless this video, and bless whoever's watching this video, and just let them know that that you have blessed them with tools, that you have blessed them with the abilities to do whatever it is that you're asking them to do, and that you are with them, that you are with them. Let me say that again. You are with them. God is with you. Just remind us of that each and every day, and continue to fill us with your presence. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you guys for watching, and can't wait to talk to you soon.